You know, that incredibly specific, like really frustrating feeling when you're right in the middle of a conversation and a perfectly formed thought just hits the back of your teeth.
Oh, yes, the physical sensation of withholding.
Exactly. Like maybe it's a necessary boundary you need to set with a coworker, or I don't know, a messy confession to a friend, or honestly just the harsh truth at a really chaotic family dinner.
The moments where the stakes feel impossibly high.
Right. But right before that thought hits the air, you swallow it. You just bite your tongue.
Yeah.
You make this rapid calculation that keeping the peace is safer than speaking the truth.
And we usually just brush that moment off, don't we?
We do. We assume that once a thought is swallowed, it's just, I don't know, evaporates into the ether. It's just gone.
Which is a very convenient assumption for our conscious minds to make. We really like to think of silence as simply an absence.
Just a blank space.
Right, just a blank space where words should have been.
Yeah.
But functionally, biologically, that couldn't be further from the truth.
And that, you guys, is exactly what we are exploring in today's deep dive. We've got some really fascinating source material today.
It is a profoundly beautiful text, very poetic, but deeply rooted in Freudian analysis.
Yeah, it really is. It's a dive into Freudian dream interpretation, specifically looking at what your silence is actually trying to communicate when you're asleep.
The language of the unsaid.
Exactly. So the mission for us today is to map out this hidden landscape. We want to understand where those swallowed words actually go.
Where they take root.
Right, the desires we actively repress and the sometimes wild, really visceral ways our unconscious mind tries to digest all those unspoken truths while we're dreaming.
It's a compelling framework, largely because it forces us to look at the actual architecture of that heavy feeling in your chest.
The physical toll it takes.
Yes. The analysis bridges this gap between incredibly vivid, almost haunting dream images and the concrete mechanics of our everyday psychology.
It really takes that abstract idea of like holding your tongue and makes it undeniably real.
It does.
So, to get us into that headspace, the author paints the central recurring dreamscape. And reading this, I was mesmerized.
So very striking image.
So imagine you are standing in a room without walls. You're surrounded by a darkness that doesn't feel empty, but rather it holds you the way water holds a stone.
A beautiful, heavy metaphor.
Yeah. And right in front of you is a mirror. But it's not made of glass. The source describes it as a surface of still breath.
Let's look at the psychology behind that specific setting because it's so rich. In Freudian terms, the unconscious doesn't really understand boundaries the way our waking mind does.
Right. It doesn't have literal walls.
Exactly. A room without walls perfectly captures a space that is infinite, yet entirely confining. You can't hit a wall, but you also, you can't escape.
Oh, wow.
And that mirror of still breath, that represents the ultimate threshold between what is deeply felt and what is actually permitted to be spoken.
Okay, so in this dream, you naturally try to speak to this mirror. You feel a word forming in the hollow behind your teeth.
A word warm with the salt of a memory.
Yes, but the word doesn't actually leave your mouth. Instead, it just swells. Your jaw physically aches with the weight of it.
The literal burden of the unsaid.
Right. And as you look into that mirror of breath, you see your lips moving, but the air around them thickens. It turns into like velvet or heavy honey or the slow drip of sealing wax.
That sealing wax metaphor is particularly crucial for understanding the mechanics of repression.
How so?
Well, the overarching point here is that psychological silence is not empty. It's a state of extreme fullness. Your throat is quite literally packed with unsaid things.
It's so visceral.
It is. The framework compares this internal state to a drawer stuffed to the brim with folded, unmailed letters.
Oh man, the unmailed letters concept, that hit me really hard.
It's universally relatable, I think. Each of those metaphorical letters is addressed to a past version of yourself or to people in your life who might not even exist in that same capacity anymore.
Right, like an old friend or a past relationship.
Exactly. They are folded and refolded so many times the paper has gone soft. And that drawer didn't just fill up overnight.
No, it definitely didn't. And the author breaks this accumulation down into what they call the 3 circles of silence.
The chronological mapping of our repression.
Yeah, how we stockpile these letters over a lifetime. So starting from the very beginning, the first circle is the child.
The foundational layer.
Right. This is the kid who learns early on that certain hungers or, specific words make the air in the room grow a little cold.
They watch a parent's face tighten.
Exactly. And they absorb the lesson that to say, I want, is to risk being pushed away. So they fold that wanting inward.
And then the second circle introduces the adolescent. Think about standing at the edge of a room, desperately wanting to make a confession that could change the entire trajectory of a relationship.
But you swallow it instead.
You do. And the lingering effect of that swallowed confession is described as a phantom limb of language.
A phantom limb. That's so evocative.
It is. You feel a dull ache, exactly where that word should have taken root and grown.
Wow. Which brings us to the third circle, the adult. And this is where I really started to see my own behavior in a slightly uncomfortable light.
It tends to hold a mirror up to all of us.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because the adult is someone who has built an entire practical life on the foundation of the unsaid. We translate our raw desires into polite practicality.
We walk around with a stone in our throat.
Yes, using our voice merely to maintain the status quo. I was thinking about this, and it feels less like we're communicating and more like we're using our words as a bomb defusal tool.
A bomb defusal tool. That's an incredibly accurate way to frame it.
I mean, think about it. We're at that chaotic dinner party, and instead of expressing our actual reality, we are just carefully snipping the right wires.
Managing everyone else's anxieties.
Exactly. We make the safe joke, we offer the polite nod, we deflect the loaded question, all just to make sure we don't accidentally shatter the fragile peace of the people around us.
But here is where the Freudian mechanics really come into play. Your conscious mind is very proud of that bomb diffuser.
Oh, absolutely. I feel very mature when I bite my tongue.
Right, and says, I'm being mature, I'm being practical. But your unconscious mind operates on a completely different economy of energy.
Okay, what does that mean?
To the unconscious, you aren't just being polite, you are suffocating a vital part of your own life force.
I'm tracking with that, but I keep getting stuck on the imagery of the dream.
The velvet and the wax.
Yeah. Like if I make a conscious, rational choice to not yell at my boss because I literally need to pay my rent, why does my sleeping brain need to torture me with a mouthful of sealing wax?
It seems overly dramatic, doesn't it?
It does. Why does the unconscious choose such an intensely physical, suffocating language just to represent a completely practical decision?
Because the emotional reality of that suppression is suffocation. This is a mechanism Freud called somatic conversion.
Somatic conversion, so translating it to the body.
Precisely. The mind translates immense psychological weight into physical mass. When you swallow an emotion, the energy of that emotion doesn't just disappear.
It gets trapped.
It gets trapped in the body. The dream isn't torturing you. It's giving you an accurate, physicalized readout of what that polite, rational choice is actually doing to your internal ecosystem.
Okay, so to figure out why the internal ecosystem reacts so dramatically, we really have to look at where this bomb defusal training actually began.
We have to dig deeper.
Way deep. We have to go back way before the dinner parties and the workplace politics.
We have to go back to the original interment of desire.
Yes. And this part of the deep dive completely shifted my perspective. It takes us back to the infant mouth, back before we possessed a single word of language.
Before the filters existed.
Right. In the beginning, the mouth isn't a bait keeper. It's simply an opening. It takes in nourishment. It lets out sound.
It only knows pure hunger and pure satisfaction. It has zero concept of refusal.
It is the ultimate, unfiltered expression of need.
Exactly. An infant reaching out for warmth isn't just using their hands. Their entire central nervous system is extending outward, seeking a secure attachment with a caregiver.
But then an inevitable shift happens, and the author focuses on this devastatingly subtle moment.
The micro tremor.
Yeah. The child reaches out, fully open, but senses a micro tremor of withdrawal from the caregiver.
It's important to note, it might not even be a conscious rejection.
Right. It could just be a slight stiffening of a tired shoulder, a fractional pause, or just a sigh.
And this is where the survival mechanics of the brain kick in. A pre-verbal child doesn't have the cognitive ability to think, oh, mom had a hard day at work.
They just feel the shift.
Exactly. The child's highly sensitive nervous system merely records the subtle architecture of that withdrawal.
So the internal logic becomes, my raw, unfiltered wanting causes the warmth to pull away.
Yes, it associates expression with abandonment.
Which leads to the most profound reframe in this entire deep dive, because we usually think of repression as a punishment.
And we pathologize it.
We do. We think we're broken, or weak, or cowardly for hiding our true feelings. But the framework here argues that this very first burial of our desire isn't an act of cowardice.
It's an act of deep, primal devotion.
Devotion. That blew my mind. The infant makes a silent vow to fold their longings small enough to carry invisibly, just so they can remain inside the fragile ecosystem of love.
It entirely changes how we view our psychological defenses, doesn't it?
It really does.
Instead of judging the fact that we hold things back, we have to acknowledge the immense, fierce loyalty it requires.
For a child to internally decide that.
Yes, to decide, I will protect this relationship at the cost of my own voice. I will shrink my needs so you don't have to retreat. It's an incredibly successful survival mechanism.
It's heartbreaking, honestly, but structurally it's flawless. It's like we are signing a tiny, invisible contract that dictates our emotional boundaries before we even know the alphabet.
We accept the terms of service to stay loved.
Exactly. But here's where my modern, practical brain hits a wall.
Okay, let's hear it.
If this repression is fundamentally an act of love, and it kept us safe and attached to our caregivers, why does the author insist that our adult selves need to unpack it?
Yeah.
Like, if the contract worked, why can't we just leave it in the filing cabinet and keep snipping the wires at the dinner party?
Because the nervous system never actually files it away. It's a core psychoanalytic principle.
Oh.
The repressed always returns.
It doesn't just stay in the drawer.
Never. The energy you use to fold that desire down doesn't vanish. The terms of that childhood contract start charging you rent.
Oh, wow.
And you pay for it in what the text calls the currency of symptoms.
The currency symptom, I love how tangible that makes it feel, because the deep dive details exactly how these unsaid things bleed out into our waking hours.
They demand to be felt.
Right. When the direct route of communication is blocked, the energy finds a detour. This is where we get those everyday displacements.
The little quirks we ignore.
Yeah. It's the obsessive, meticulous nature of someone's handwriting, or the neurotic way someone arranges the objects on their desk before they can even start working.
Or the laugh that comes just a fraction of a second too quickly.
Oh, deployed specifically to cover up a subtle tremor in the voice.
Exactly. Your lips might remain firmly closed, but your body is constantly speaking in its own cipher.
And when that waking cipher isn't enough to burn off the energy, that's when the buried desires flood into our sleep.
But, as the analysis points out, they don't show up naked.
No, they arrive wearing masks.
This touches on the dual mechanisms of Freudian dream work: condensation and displacement.
Break that down for us.
Well, the unconscious energy desperately wants to be processed, right? But that ancient childhood contract dictates that speaking the raw truth is dangerous.
Because it triggers massive anxiety.
Exactly. So the brain's censorship mechanism steps in and weaves a disguise.
And it weaves that disguise using what Freud called day residues. So that deep, ancient hunger from when you were an infant, or maybe that unmailed letter to your ex from a decade ago, it gets masked by a random newspaper headline you scrolled past that morning.
Or a snippet of a pop song. Or the face of the barista who handed you your coffee.
It's so weird, but it makes so much sense.
Think of it like a computer running a highly intensive critical virus scan in the background.
Okay.
If it showed you the raw code of what it was fixing, you might panic and shut the whole system down.
Right. It would be overwhelming.
So it displays a benign, slightly confusing screensaver of a barista and a newspaper instead. It allows the processing to happen without triggering the system's core alarms.
That is a perfect analogy. It totally explains the weirdness of dreams. And it explains why the unconscious reroutes this energy into such specific, poetic metaphors when we try to speak in the dream.
The physical materials in the mouth.
Yes. The mouth doesn't just stay empty. It fills with materials that represent the exact flavor of the repressed emotion. Like sometimes the mouth fills with sand.
Sand. Representing the gritty texture of time past.
Right, the feeling of words that have fossilized because they were held back for so long.
Or the mouth fills with rushing water.
Which is so overwhelming.
It represents fluid, overpowering emotion that completely lacks the structure to find solid form in language. You feel it entirely, but you cannot shape it into a syllable.
And then there's the most tragic one, dissolving petals.
Yeah.
Trying to speak, but your mouth is full of soft flower petals that literally melt away before you can make a sound. It perfectly captures the lost beauty of an expression that was never allowed to bloom.
They are deeply evocative images, but they serve a very precise functional purpose for the psyche.
But wait, if my brain is working overtime to get me to process this heavy emotional baggage, giving me a mouthful of dissolving petals seems like a genuinely terrible strategy.
From a logical standpoint, yes.
Yeah. I'm just gonna wake up confused about flowers. Why doesn't the unconscious just give me the literal memory? Why not just show me the exact moment I swallowed my anger at my boss so I can deal with it?
It comes back to the core paradox of the psyche. The unconscious is not trying to force a dramatic, literal confession.
It's not.
No, If it showed you the raw memory and forced you to speak the exact words, it would violate the core childhood vow.
Oh, it would shatter the ecosystem.
Exactly, which is exactly what your nervous system was designed to prevent.
So it's protecting me from my own realization.
Precisely. The goal of the dream isn't to make you wake up and shout your secrets. The goal is simply to introduce your conscious mind to the texture of the unsaid thing, at a dosage you can actually tolerate.
So it uses the sand and the petals.
So you can finally feel the grief of the unsaid without the sheer terror of having to name it directly. The dream isn't trying to solve your life. It's just offering to be a witness.
Offering a witness. That is a massive paradigm shift, and it brings us right to the resolution of this entire journey.
The actual integration.
Right. How do we actually interact with this? Because the author makes it incredibly clear that the goal of self-analysis, of paying attention to these dreams and these heavy silences, is not to grab a sledgehammer and violently tear down your own defenses.
No, absolutely not.
You aren't supposed to rip the unmailed letters out of the drawer and force yourself to read them all at once.
Because those defenses kept you alive. Taking a sledgehammer to them would just cause completely different kind of trauma.
Right. And the phrase the analysis uses is brilliant. The work is about changing the air pressure in the room where the past is stored.
Changing the air pressure. A gentle adjustment.
Exactly. You aren't forcing the highly compressed, painful memories to explode outward. You are just gradually altering the atmospheric space around them, giving them the room to slowly expand into a new, less volatile shape.
And as you do that, the dream itself begins to change.
That was the most beautiful part to me.
You might still find yourself in that infinite room without walls, standing in front of the mirror of breath. But the quality of the silence shifts.
Right. The dream doesn't suddenly end with you giving a triumphant monologue. The lips in the mirror don't burst open.
No, they soften.
They soften. The text describes them losing their rigid, terrified definition. They melt at the edges and become something more natural, more ancient.
They look like a closed seashell or a carefully folded flower.
The fundamental nature of the silence transforms. It moves from being this mechanism of suppression, like a tight, panicked feeling of this absolutely must not be known, into a sanctuary.
It becomes a reverent space, a feeling of this is simply too sacred or too complex for words.
It's the realization that not every single truth we carry belongs in the noisy marketplace of language. Some things are entirely valid, just remaining felt in the body.
The silence isn't a failure of expression anymore.
Wow.
Which is the ultimate liberation from the childhood contract. You finally understand that holding something back isn't a symptom of brokenness.
It's a vessel.
Yes, a vessel holding the profound fullness of everything you've loved, desired, and survived, but couldn't attach a word to.
So let's bring this down to earth for a second. What does this mean for us when the alarm clock actually goes off?
The waking reality.
Yeah. The deep dive outlines this deeply grounding process of waking integration. You don't wake up to a cinematic orchestral swell where all your trauma is magically washed away.
It's far more subtle than that.
It gives this incredibly vivid example. You wake up, you walk to the kitchen, you pour a glass of water, and you drink.
A completely mundane action. But the internal gesture behind it has changed.
Exactly. It's no longer just about quenching physical thirst. The framework suggests that the water you drink carries the memory of all the words you've swallowed over your life.
You are finally absorbing the salt water of your unsaid confessions directly into your cellular memory.
It's no longer a poison you are trying to flush out. It's a nutrient you are integrating. You are allowing the unsaid to just be part of your makeup.
You stop carrying the silence as a heavy, exhausting burden, and you start wearing it as an atmosphere.
But I want to make sure we land this in a way that actually helps you, the listener, tomorrow morning. Because the poetry of cellular memory is beautiful, but we still have to commute, sit in meetings, talk to our partners, and exist in a highly verbal society.
We can't just be silent all the time.
Right. We've established this isn't a mandate to stop filtering ourselves and just blurt out our deepest secrets at the morning stand-up meeting.
Definitely not.
It's about letting the pause before we speak become fertile ground rather than a panic room. But practically speaking, how does shifting this internal air pressure actually change our waking interactions with other people if the words themselves remain unspoken?
It changes the fundamental resonance of your presence. Think about the energy required to frantically guard a gate.
It's exhausting.
Very. When you are terrified of what might slip out, your entire body is tense. You are vibrating with the effort of withholding.
And people subconsciously pick up on that, don't they?
They absolutely pick up on that rigid defensive energy. But when you accept that the unsaid things are safe within you, when you turn the prison into a sanctuary, your nervous system finally settles.
So the bomb defusal squad gets to stand down.
Exactly. And the source paints a beautiful picture of what this looks like in practice. Imagine you were having a conversation with a close friend.
Okay.
They say something, and you feel that old, familiar tightening in your throat, a complicated truth welling up.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Before, you would have either forced it out awkwardly or swallowed it down in a panic, breaking your own connection to the moment. But now, you just hold the space, you let the pause naturally extend.
You don't rush in to fill the gap just to manage their comfort.
Yes, and the profound part is that in that held, softened space, a current passes between you and your friend anyway.
A deep recognition that entirely bypasses language.
Your friend's posture relaxes, their eyes soften, not because of a brilliant insight you articulated, but because of the steady, grounded way you were holding the silence.
You are vibrating with the depth of your own capacity to feel, and that permits them to do the same.
Precisely.
That reframes everything for me. It changes silence from a brick wall designed to keep people out into a conductive medium that actively connects us. It's like the way sound moves better and faster through water than it does through the air.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The original vow we made as infants to stay quiet, to keep the warmth from pulling away, was a vow rooted in pure fear.
Right.
This new integrated silence is rooted in trust. It's the trust that the unsaid things won't tear us apart from the inside, and it's the trust that true, durable connection with another human being doesn't require us to meticulously articulate every single pulse of our humanity.
Wow. We have covered so much ground today. We started deep in that suffocating infinite room without walls, choking on ceiling wax and the heavy weight of a drawer full of unmailed letters.
We went all the way back.
We tracked that weight all the way back to a heartbreaking childhood vow of devotion, analyzing that tiny microtremor where we first learned to compress our needs just to survive.
We saw how the brain creatively masks those repressed desires as sand and dissolving petals.
And finally, we've arrived at this realization that the stone in our throat doesn't have to be a stone at all. Our silence is not a failure of expression.
It's a journey from viewing our own psychological defenses as the enemy to honoring them as the incredibly faithful guardians they always were.
And once we honor them, we can finally, gently retire them from active duty.
We can.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. Building on this idea of the silent current that passes between people, think about the conversations you're going to have today or tomorrow. If you consciously stop rushing to fill every single awkward pause with polite chatter, just to act as the room's bomb diffuser, what might you finally be able to hear in the negative space of your relationships? Could it be that our shared, unforced silence is actually the most authentic, unfiltered conversation we are capable of having?